Hey, soccer fans, Nick back with the Feed the Fire podcast, and this is our Cup Talk episode. We're recapping the MLS Cup between Inter Miami and Vancouver Whitecaps. We are looking forward to next year's U.S. Open Cup. We've got some news about how that tournament's going to shake up, and then we're going to take a look at the World Cup draw, go through the groups, and see which of the European play-in teams would be a better matchup for the United States. Before we get into all that, I'm going to remind everyone, make sure you follow along with the show on social media at Glasshouse Soccer. You can email me, glasshouseSoccer@gmail.com, or you can also like, subscribe, rate, review, do all of that stuff on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Help grow the show, make that algorithm nice and happy so that way we can continue to grow the conversation around Major League Soccer, the Chicago Fire, and soccer in America. All right, let's get right into the MLS Cup talk here. As you all know by now, and if you didn't watch the game yourself, I'm sure you heard everyone talking about it in the office today. Inter Miami wins their first MLS Cup, defeating the Vancouver Whitecaps 3-1. The other bit of trivia that we referenced last week, now we've got Messi and DePaul, and I'm spacing on the other Argentinian who are now the only players to have a World Cup trophy and an MLS Cup trophy. Also, David Beckham becomes the first person to have an MLS Cup as a player and as an owner. So there's your little bit of trivia there. But this was a very exciting game. It was not predetermined by any means, and I think actually, usually when we talk about predetermination of games, we look at the officiating, but I think the officiating crew did a pretty good job on this one. They handed out a lot of yellow cards. How many in this matchup? 10 yellow cards, 4 to Miami, 6 to Vancouver. There probably could have been 1 or 2 more to either team. I think they kept the coaches in check. I don't know if one of those 4 Miami cards was to the players, but there was also one given to the Miami bench. So there was a lot of officiating that could have gone south, but didn't. I think all in all, it was a pretty fair and even officiated game. So that being said, this game was not predetermined by any stretch of the imagination. It did have to be decided on the field. And as I mentioned in prior episodes, would the team effort of Vancouver be able to overcome the individual effort by Leo Messi? And in this case, no, it didn't. And I was happy to see both teams did not come out tentative. Both teams went for it during those first 20 minutes of the match, but it was Inter Miami that opened the scoring, unfortunately, against the run of play for Vancouver's sake, and off an own goal at that, where the ball gets played in behind down the right wing. It gets crossed in quickly. Ocampo for Vancouver is running back towards the goal. It bounces off his leg, goes in near post. Nothing Takaoka could have done to prevent that. So Ocampo, one of those guys, picked a really bad time to have a really bad game. Not just because of the own goal overall, not the best performance. A lot of the Miami was really going after his side of the field, and he just had a hard time really keeping up with some of the Miami attackers. But that was how the scoring opened, and it was 1-0 Miami at halftime. Vancouver does get the equalizer. Ahmed in the 60th minute, just great work by him to get in the right position to find it. And he had really been frustrating the Miami defense, especially Maxi Falcon, who probably could have gotten a red card at some point in this game. A double yellow. He did end up with a yellow card. That was a long time coming. If you watch him off the ball, he is constantly tripping and pushing and hitting and kicking and throwing down opposing players. And he was very, very lucky as well to not have a penalty called against him in this match. However, to the officiating crew's credit, they're not going to let a PK decide a cup match, whether you agree with that thinking or not. So Ahmed was frustrating the back line, especially Falcon, and a lot of people question why he ended up getting subbed out late in that match as the one guy who was threatening him, but I guess the thinking was let's go for some fresh legs. Now, it was DePaul who gets the go-ahead goal for Miami in the 71st, and Allende puts it away for Miami in 90 plus 6. By the way, Tadeo Allende with that goal sets a record for most goals in an MLS Cup playoff season, so congrats to him on setting that record. Of course, there's a couple more games than there have been, and of course, you're playing with Messi, who is the greatest of all time and having the greatest season in MLS of all time, both goals and assists, as well as the best playoff run for an individual player, it would seem, based on goal contributions. So, and it was Messi who, again, had those double assists. The assist for DePaul and Allende. The DePaul one was an interesting development though, because this was something that I was telling my son, watch Messi. Watch him on the defensive side of things. Taylor Twellman had come out on the broadcast early on in the match and said part of why Miami has been so dominant during this playoff run and part of why Messi has been playing so well during this playoff run is that he's playing more defensively. He's not just walking around on defense. He is getting back and getting into the right defensive positions. With Suarez being out the last couple of games by the head coach's decision, the younger strikers are getting back and counter pressing and running back on defense. And so you don't have that luxury of a few extra seconds to get that pass out of your backfield if Suarez and Messi are behind you and they're not going to track back. That has changed in this match. But Messi was not playing very hard defense that first half, for parts of that first half and going into the second half. And I told my son, watch Messi. There's going to be a moment where Vancouver forgets he's there and he's just going to jump on a pass or a sloppy first touch. And sure enough, that is exactly what happened. He jumps on the defender. Defender gets flustered, startled, turns the ball over. Messi slots a real nice through ball to DePaul, who finishes it, and that's it. Now Vancouver was not without opportunities to equalize. They actually had the people are calling it the triple doink. I'm going to get technical. It's a double doink plus one, where you saw Sabi's shot hit the right post, had the keeper beat, had the defense beat, hits the right post, bounces across the front of the goal, hits the left post, and comes out to a backtracking Falcone, who thankfully didn't put it in his net from a Miami perspective. Takes a touch on it. Sabi follows his shot, as every great player should, and then gets in and puts a tackle on Falcone, knocks the ball off the post again, goes out for a goal kick. So within about a 5 or 6 second segment there, Sabi hits the post 3 times, and Vancouver, that just seemed like if that shot wasn't going in, if that sequence wasn't going to give them a goal, then they weren't going to equalize, and it was going to be Miami to walk away with it. Now, looking at the statistics of this match, Miami had 8 shots to Vancouver's 11, but both teams ended up with 4 shots on goal. Vancouver had 2 blocked shots. Passing-wise, this is insane. Looking at these passing numbers, Vancouver ended up with 527 passes to Miami's 287. I rarely see. Now, I break down the stats for the Fire games during the regular season, but I don't think I've ever seen a team with only 287 passes in a game. And as a result of that, Miami had 80% passing accuracy to Vancouver's 88% passing accuracy. But here's what I will say, though. A lot of people came out, including the broadcast, saying Vancouver controlled the game, Vancouver was dominating, this is their game, all those sorts of things. I disagree, because if you go down and we're going to take a look at the expected goals here, Vancouver, with their 527 passes, 88% passing accuracy, 11 shots, 4 of which were on goal, only ended up with a 1.7 expected goal. Miami with a 1.6 xG. And I couldn't find a heat map, but let me tell you, Vancouver's quote-unquote control of the game did not create any sort of threatening offense. And let's go take a look at their star players and how they rated out. Using the foot mob scores, you had Thomas Mueller at a 6.6. You had Sebastian Berhalter at a 6.5. Andre Kubas, a 6.2. Brian White gets the 7.4, and Ahmed gets the 7.4 for the assist and the goal. But otherwise, the only other player who was above a 6.8 was Sabi because of his aggressiveness and his shooting. Everyone else on that team, other than your striker and your 2 wingers, again, other than White, Sabi, and Ahmed, were at a 6.7 or worse. So as a team, Vancouver did not perform. Their top players, Mueller, Berhalter, Kubas on the attack, and then Blackman, even with a 5.6 on defense, Takaoka with a 5.6 in the net. Those guys did not perform. Even their subs, Ryan Gold and Jodrick Pupe, come in with a 6.2 and a 6.5 ranking, again, according to FootMob. Meanwhile, you want to look at Miami, Messi with an 8.9, MVP of the match. Busquets, 7.2. DePaul, 8.1. Ian Frey, 7.3. Even Noah Allen and Jordi Alba, 6.7, 6.9. Their keeper, Rios Novo, has a 5.8 rating. And I don't know how much these ratings for keepers vary from the field players, but oh my gosh, if my keeper's at a 5.8 out of 10, I'm expecting he's given up 2 or 3 goals at a minimum. But no, he did enough. He made a big save uh, in that second half to keep things or to keep Miami's lead, and that was it. Messi's brilliance, along with contributions by Busquets, DePaul, and the rest of the team, were enough to overcome what Vancouver put out as a group. And of course, Vancouver not playing at their best. To continue on the statistics here, both teams had a corner. Vancouver had 6 crosses to Miami's 3. We know that's a little bit more of Vancouver's game, with Mueller being such an aerial presence. Berhalter whipping in balls from set pieces and corners, which we did not see a lot of in this match. And Berhalter, even on one of his set pieces, just absolutely skied what was a great scoring opportunity for them. Miami was called for 4 offsides. Vancouver, 0. So you could see, even though Vancouver had all this possession and all these passes completed, they never were threatening. And that is why, to go back to what I was saying before, I would disagree with anyone who's saying Vancouver controlled this game. I would definitely disagree with people saying Vancouver dominated this game. No, Miami was happy to play the game that they had, to kind of lull Vancouver. Miami was pressing very high that first half, and they're up 1-0, and then they sit back. And they dropped back a little bit. They even came out of that second half like asleep, probably thinking, we've got them right where we want them. Let's just not do anything stupid and give up an equalizer. So you can say statistically Vancouver controlled this game, but in actuality, and using the eye test, this was Miami's game from the start. They knew exactly what they were doing. Vancouver walked right into it. Vancouver could not score first or equalize and really take momentum and really drive in 4 or 5 shots in a 5 or 10 minute sequence to make Miami rethink their tactics or their players on the pitch, and they played right into what Miami wanted. As far as the goalkeeping goes, Rios Nova was credited with 3 saves, Takaoka credited with 2. Miami's defense, though, they were not without their work. They had 11 clearances to Vancouver's 2, and then 22 fouls called against Miami, 23 against Vancouver, 4 yellows to Miami, 6 yellows to the Whitecaps. So that is how the game breaks down statistically. Some of the things that I noticed as well. A couple things that I tweeted out, so make sure you're following along at Glasshouse Soccer on social media, so you can kind of get my game time thoughts as they come in. I already talked about how both teams came in ready. No one was easing into this game. How Miami was picking on Ocampo, especially after that early own goal, and that Miami was in control of the game. Maybe not through passing, maybe not statistically, but they controlled the game. The Whitecaps, I think, were lulled into a false sense of superiority and did not make many changes, if any changes, going into that second half, other than playing harder, playing faster, and playing a little more physical maybe, while Miami decided, let's just take a step back and absorb whatever pressure they're going to throw at us to start the second half. What really hurt Vancouver, again, Mueller and Berhalter, pretty much non-existent, especially from a goal contribution standpoint. One of the things I did say was I would love to see Fafa Picault get in this match, just as a throwback to like old MLS, to the MLS old timers here, and let him get on the pitch during an MLS Cup final victory for his team And I think it would have just been fitting, something that MLSers could have talked about, rather than it's like, oh no, it's just young guns and Messi and friends that did it for them. It would have been cool to see Pico get out on the pitch, but that again, that's just the old MLS head in me. Not too much more I want to talk about this MLS Cup matchup. Didn't go the way I personally wanted it as a fan. I wanted to see Vancouver win this for so many reasons, but I think Mueller summed it up best where he says Vancouver is a team on the rise. They have never been at this level of MLS before. Regular season play, postseason play, Champions Cup, everything. So they are a team on the rise. They now have that experience. They now have that feeling of what it is to play at this level and to play for MLS Cup. Meanwhile, you look at Miami, this is what they were built to do. This is why they acquired all the players they did. This is why like everything Miami did was to win an MLS Cup. You know, Vancouver, I don't think they set out to win an MLS Cup at the beginning of the season. Obviously, every team's going to say we're here to win an MLS Cup. That's our goal. But I think it was just for them about improving, finding the right players, finding the right style of play, coaching staff, all that stuff. Jesper Sorensen, you know, great find for them and what he's been able to do with that club. But Miami was here to win. I don't want to say they were the team of destiny, but they were the team of trophies, right? When Messi came to Inter Miami. So, couple different contrasting things there. Again, I wish Vancouver would have won it. Kind of sick of all the Miami stuff, but hey, when you've got the greatest of all time going at it, you know, you can't be too shocked when it goes his way. I will end my MLS Cup segment, though, saying something that my dad always told me. He goes, who cares who wins? You still got to go to work on Monday. And sure enough, he was right, as usual. And yep, cranking through the emails, getting through my reporting, reaching out to team members, getting ready for our winter meetings. That was my work day. So, MLS Cup 2025 in the books. Congrats to Inter Miami. Now, the next cup we want to talk about here on the show, U.S. Open Cup. The format, scheduling, and participating teams have been finalized for the 2026 Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. I'm going to go through the press release here that the Chicago Fire Communications Department put out on behalf of the U.S. Soccer Federation. Now, just some dates to keep in mind. First round of the U.S. Open Cup is set for March 17th to 19th. And there will be 32 open division and amateur clubs alongside 48 pro sides, professional teams, to compete in the 111th edition of the U.S. Open Cup. So here is the announcement. U.S. Soccer has announced the format, schedule, and participating teams for the tournament proper of the 111th edition of the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. U.S. Soccer's historic National Club Championship that celebrates elite amateur and pro soccer in communities across the country begins in mid-March and will conclude with a showpiece final on October 21st. A field of 80 teams will contest for a $1 million purse with a place in the 2027 CONCACAF Champions Cup also up for grabs. CBS Sports will return as the multimedia rights partner for the 2026 competition. I'm going to pause there. 80 teams. This is a far cry from the over 100 teams that have been participating in the last 3 years of this tournament. I think it's sad that they can't have that same type of buy-in, you know, right in above when they say it celebrates elite, amateur, and pro soccer in communities, right? The elite amateur clubs, and even the semi-pro clubs, even the not so elite amateur clubs, all had the opportunity to say they played in the U.S. Open Cup or an Open Cup qualifying, but no longer the case because the number of teams has now decreased from over 100 teams to 80. Now, I can understand the arguments on the other side of that, that this is a quote-unquote dying tournament, that MLS participation is waning, that teams aren't going to go all out for just $1 million prize. Now, the CONCACAF Champions Cup berth, that's, $1 million plus whatever you get from that, as well as all the other exposure and non-measurable monies that can come in from as a result of that. But still, those are the criticisms against it, and they're fair criticisms. However, I think U.S. Soccer, their job is to grow the game here and improve the game here. And by reducing access to the U.S. Open Cup, by de-emphasizing the amateur clubs and the semi-pro clubs that can get in, by removing some of the prize money, or at least I don't see it in here. It used to be the last amateur club that would be there, and the last club from each lower division tier would get a bonus prize. I don't see that listed in this article. I'm not saying it's not there, but I don't see it listed out. And so if they took that away, again, how is that helping to grow soccer at the lower levels? So that's what bothers me about only having 80 teams compete. I get schedule congestion, I get the quality of competition, I get that there's only been one non-MLS team in the final in how many years, and only one non-MLS team has won it since 1996. So I get that, but that's really not the point of it. To see if can a USL2 side win it? That's not the point of it. The point is to grow the fan base and to grow competitive soccer at all levels. All right, let me down off my soapbox and get back into the article here. The U.S. Open Cup format will feature 7 rounds, one fewer than recent editions, to avoid overlap with the FIFA Men's World Cup calendar. So there's their other excuse that, well, we can't have any more rounds and more teams because we've got the World Cup. Yeah, let's see if they go back to this format the following season, or even after, when MLS changes its schedule to go from fall to spring. Maybe they will be able to expand it if the tournament runs from spring to fall when it's part of the off season. But we will see how that goes. This could be the excuse that U.S. Soccer and MLS have said to minimize the number of teams participating. The article now continues. Because the competition features one fewer round than recent editions, the field of professional teams has been reduced from 64 to 48, with slots for each professional division allocated as evenly as possible. League standings will serve as qualifying criteria to determine which professional teams are eligible. Therefore, all teams participating in 2026 U.S. Open Cup must have played a league season in 2025. In addition to the qualifying criteria for the professional divisions, the competition has adjusted 2 rules to align with the current ecosystem for professional and amateur clubs. First, a one club, one entry rule applies to all divisions. Under this rule, a professional club must enter its highest level professional team. For the Open Division, the National League qualifying track was eliminated, and all amateur teams are entered directly via U.S. Soccer. So I do like this one club, one entry rule. First of all, it is on par with the rest of the world. It is equitable and fair, and also you avoid what has happened in the past with MLS, like we saw here in Chicago, where CF2 gets sent to play in the Open Cup. Or just stacking your roster with a lot of academy or second team players and just letting them run out, because I think there are some roster rule changes as well, so teams could probably do that if they wanted to get around this and just maybe bring everybody up, but that might impact their MLS roster. Anyway, let's forget about all that speculation and stuff, but it is a one club, one entry rule here. Sadly, the Open Division is out, and all amateur teams are entered directly via U.S. Open Soccer. Back to my prior point, it was great seeing a lot of these amateur teams try to compete and try to qualify through the Open Division. Second new rule here, or second adjusted rule here, all numerical limits to the number of players that can be eligible for a competition roster have been removed across all divisions. All players from a club are eligible to participate, and players can be added up to 1 day prior to a match, subject to league and U.S. Soccer player registration regulations, as well as competition eligibility rules related to cup ties, length of loan, and disciplinary action. So here's a rule that kind of solidifies what I was hinting at previously. So you can bring guys onto your roster. So you could see again, I guess, Sasha Kleshin, Bradley Wright, Phillips, Dax McCarty, all going back to the Des Moines Menace, as long as they comply with Des Moines Menace League rules and get on the roster at least 1 day prior to a match. However, this could cut against clubs doing what I said, where, say, the Fire want to rest their first team, and all of a sudden they bring their entire CF2 team up to to the senior level on a 4-day contract just to have them play a U.S. Open Cup game, well, they would still have to be accepted by MLS rules, which that is highly unlikely to happen on MLS rules, unless you're in Miami. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I am not promoting any of the roster fixing, cheating, anything that people say out there in Inter Miami. No, I am not promoting that at all. But again, it does kind of restrict and help the competition have clubs' first teams, clubs' choice players participate in it. Now I'll get a little details on the tournament itself. The first round will be played March 17th, 18th, and 19th, and will continue its format of 32 matches, featuring teams from the Open Division facing off against professional opponents. Amateurs will face off against one of the 17 professional teams from Division 2 or the 15 professional teams from Division 3. The 32 winners of the first round will then face off in a second round matchup on March 31st or April 1st. So it looks like the amateur clubs will be split up. They will play against USL and NISL teams and then move into the second round to face one of the MLS teams in the round of 32. That occurs on April 14th or 15th. 8 of the MLS teams will be seeded as home teams, and 8 will be seeded as away teams ahead of their draw based on qualifying criteria. So to be determined on that qualifying criteria, but you're going to see at least half MLS teams playing away games. The final 32 teams will play down to a field of 4 semifinalists in May before the competition breaks until the semifinals on September 15th or 16th. The final match is slated for Wednesday, October 21st. So let's see some more details here of how it's going to be broken down. And I'm thankful that they're going to continue the groups, drawings, and pairings to be based on geography, along with basic mathematic principles of a single elimination competition. That's a great sentence, man. I like the geographic rivalries, and I think it brings a very unique flavor to the U.S. Open Cup. I love to see it. Also, random selection will be used to solve a lack of logical geographic fit. Okay, so there's still possible some movement around. Draw groups must be created to account for venue availability in any round based on the league scheduling of competing teams or other conditions per tournament regulations. The Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup is U.S. Soccer's club championship and has crowned a champion annually since 1914, with the exceptions of 2020 and 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This historic tournament is conducted on a single-game knockout basis and open to all pro and amateur teams affiliated with U.S. Soccer. That I think they need to put an asterisk on because we just heard earlier that they're restricting the Open Division. You have to be part of U.S. Soccer. So maybe technically they're correct, but don't make it seem like every club in the country is eligible to participate. U.S. Open Cup is the longest running national soccer competition in the U.S. and the world's third longest continuously run national cup tournament, other than those 2 COVID years. Okay, keep giving yourself a pat on the back for that. It is the only competition in USA-based team sports where amateurs have the chance to play professionals in direct competition. So that is kind of the long of it and the short of it as well. The article does go into the qualifying conditions for each of the various divisions in U.S. Soccer, the first, second, and third divisions. So as far as Division 1 goes, 16 teams will enter in the round of 32, and those are the MLS teams. Now, for MLS's purposes, teams participating in CONCACAF Champions Cup are excluded from the Open Cup. If you're in Champions Cup, you're not in the Open Cup. Now, teams not participating in the Leagues Cup can qualify for the Open Cup. The top 4 teams from the list from each conference will be seeded as a home team based on league standings from 2025, pending venue availability, of course, and the next best teams in the Supporters Shield standings that are not in the CONCACAF Champions Cup will enter the Open Cup. So if you're not in Champions Cup and you're not in Leagues Cup, you're in Open Cup and you will probably have a home game pending seating and venue availability. If you're not in Champions Cup but also in Leagues Cup, then you will have to be some of the next best teams to those not in Leagues Cup in the Supporters Shield standings. And that's how they will qualify the MLS clubs. Now, the Division 2 teams that will get in, the 17 teams from USL that will be playing in this tournament, they enter in the first round. So MLS comes in the round of 32. USL Championship teams come in the round before that, the first round. And 2025 USL League standings will be used to determine the Open Cup qualification. Positions will be allocated evenly between the East and West conferences based on conference standing with total points as the tiebreaker. So that is how USL clubs will get in. The Division 3 clubs, teams entering in the first round, the MLS Next Pro teams. However, please remember that players from the MLS Next Pro teams affiliated with the senior team may appear with their affiliate. The players may appear with their affiliate senior club, but the MLS Next Pro team cannot participate in it. So MLS Next Pro teams that are part of a club that plays in D1 MLS are not eligible, but because there are fewer than 16 teams participating in this league, all returning eligible teams will qualify. So the Carolina Core and the Chattanooga FC, yes, I said the Chattanooga, will be participating coming in from MLS Next Pro. So essentially, there's all those rules, there's all those language just to say Carolina and Chattanooga will be in from MLS Next Pro, because all the other MLS Next Pro teams are affiliated with senior teams, and you can only have one team enter. Now we're starting to get to the lower divisions here. USL League One will have a number of teams qualify because fewer than 16 of their teams participated in the 2025 league. All returning eligible teams will qualify. For example, AV Alta FC, Charlotte Independence, Chattanooga Red Wolves, FC Naples, Ford Madison, Greenville Triumph, One Knoxville, Portland Hearts of Pine, Richmond Kickers, South Georgia Tormenta, Spokane Velocity, Union Omaha, and Westchester SC. Those are those USL League One teams. And as far as the open division / amateur round, there will be 32 teams entering there. Half of the open division slots have been allocated to teams advancing from qualifying rounds played this fall of 2025, and the other half have been filled with teams awarded buys into the first round based on strong performance in 2025 competitions. So that is how we're going to round out this league. There's a whole bunch of them. Go check out the list either at Chicago Fire FC or at the US Open Cup's website, and that is where you can find out all the latest info there. I think it's going to be a great tournament. Again, I'm sad that it's not the full openness that is been indicative and characteristic of an Open Cup and of the US Open Cup in past years, but this is a very structured, streamlined, and you really are going to see some good competition and good matches played quicker as a result of the shortened tournament, as a result of the more selective, or as a result of the less expansive tournament, however which way you want to put it. So the final cup I wanted to talk about was the FIFA World Cup draw, but man, I've been rambling on for over a half hour here. I think I'm going to have to break this up into a second episode, so please stay tuned. I'll do a FIFA World Cup draw group breakdown next. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you follow along and leave a good rating and review wherever you're following along on your podcast. That way you won't miss my interpretation of the FIFA World Cup 2026 draw. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Would love to hear from you. Email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com. Share the show with all your friends. And as always, let's go Fire.